My name is Brandon Finney, and I'm here to inform you about another solution possibly for your computer needs. Everyone's got a computer, everyone uses a computer, and I'm sure, like me, you're tired of spending hundreds upon hundreds of dollars every year or every few years to upgrade your computer, and then you upgrade your computer and then your software doesn't work with your new, or your hardware doesn't work with your new software, and then you have to spend money to upgrade that. You wish there was another way. I know I do. With that being said, maybe you should consider Ubuntu. What Ubuntu is an open source architecture or application for an alternative to Microsoft Windows and Windows Office. This is their logo here. This is just a little screenshot. I'm currently a student working on my information technology degree. I've taken 2 full classes on Linux by themselves. Ubuntu is a Linux product or a Linux distribution. I've done 2 research papers on the subject, and I've spent hours upon hours of working on computers and playing with different softwares such as Ubuntu. Plus I've done a lot of research on it over my times in the different classes. What I'd like to do is inform you today a little bit about Ubuntu and why it is a viable option to consider versus something like Microsoft Windows, any of the versions of Windows, or something as far as Mac OS X. The main reasons we would consider something like Ubuntu is number 1, the cost, the level of service, and the ease of use. I know I look at all those aspects before I even consider buying anything. And it always comes down to probably those 3 things are the root. The cost of Ubuntu versus Microsoft Windows is dramatic. Currently, right now, according to Windows.com, to go out and purchase a new system with Microsoft Windows on it is going to set you back about $150. If you're going to upgrade your current version of Windows, it's going to cost you about $190, and that's depending on where you're coming from to where you're going as far as what Windows operating system you're currently using, or what Windows changes you have to do in the meantime. So round numbers, if you're looking anywhere from $150 to $200 to easily upgrade your current operating system. Prices for Ubuntu, free. Has been, now, forever. Ubuntu is free. So I can go to Ubuntu's website, which is www.ubuntu.com, and download the entire operating system. It's always free because it operates under an open source GNU license. And what that means is the source code is free to use, and since it's free, if I change it or someone else makes changes to it, they can't charge prices for it. They can't make a change to it and then say, okay, I'm going to charge you money for this. So it's free now and forever, which means all the upgrades. So Windows comes out with a new version. Hey, you got to pay $150 to get the new version. No, Ubuntu comes out and says, hey, there's a new version available. It's available for you. And that's protected. What's also great about that is almost anything that runs on Ubuntu, as far as their word processor, their PowerPoint presentation viewer, those are free as well. So when they make those changes to the operating system, those become available and are free as well. This is a screenshot of Ubuntu version Netbook Remix. You can see that I took this picture back November 7th of last year, of 2009. What about the service? Is service great on Ubuntu? Service on Ubuntu is as good or better than Windows. Everything these days comes down to tech support forums. You get online, you type in your question, it populates, maybe 20, 30 responses to it. Windows does the same thing. Windows has text forums all over. Ubuntu has tech forums all over. What's great, though, compared to Ubuntu versus Microsoft Windows, is the fact that Ubuntu is open source. So there are thousands upon thousands of developers all over the world that are working on Ubuntu constantly. Every few months, a newer version of Ubuntu or the Linux kernel will come out. So Ubuntu will then retool and come up with a new version. What this means is that as this constantly changes, as new printers, as new cameras, as new scanners come available, new distributions of like Mozilla Firefox or anything come out, those are automatically updated for the new Ubuntu. What happens with Windows is you'll have a change. We just entered the Windows 7 change, which was only a couple years after the Vista change, which was several years after the XP change. So you have kind of these leapfrog approaches. with Ubuntu, there's always a constant, or Linux, there's always a constant change and upgrade. Um, Ubuntu Linux publishes the source code of the operating system, which means that if I need to, I can get in there and I can change a setting, or I can change something specifically the way I need it for mine. But what that means is that there's developers out there. They found, let's say for instance, they found that, this version of Mozilla Firefox does not work with the current version of Ubuntu. They will make a change to it, republish it. Ubuntu makes that available to everyone instantly. You don't have to report a problem to Microsoft. Microsoft sits down, looks at the problem, and decides what they're going to do with it, creates a patch, and then sends it out to you. The Ubuntu is a little bit more forward-thinking on it. That's because Windows developers only look at the source code, and Windows developers only have access to it versus everyone in the world. So, because of this, Ubuntu can virtually support any peripheral device out there or any software, because you can customize and build anything out here. The tech forums are very easy to get to, very easy to use, and because there's so many developers out there, you have just unlimited source. You're not going to have some guy over top of you saying, well, you're stupid, you should know how to do this. They're very knowledgeable and very supportive of this product. Finally, it comes down to, okay, the support's good, but now what? Compared to Windows, you need to know how easy it is to use. Right here, people are going to pretty much recognize that this is a GUI interface, mouse point and click. Here's another one. This is probably more familiar to most people as a Windows screen. You've got your icons on your desktop, very well labeled out. You've got your taskbar. The taskbar happens to be across the top. You have applications, places, and systems. You have your power button. You can come over here and click and shut down your system. This is very similar to what people are familiar with Windows. Since Windows is the most popular operating system out there, it's natural that Linux is going to copy this so people know how to use it. That has been one of Linux's problems in the past. Linux has been more of a computer geek operating system. You had to be very knowledgeable about writing code and about how to use the command prompts versus having the GUI interface. Now that there's a very interactive GUI interface, which GUI stands for Graphic User Interface, it's a lot more easy to use. A gentleman by the name of James Brooks has stated that the Ubuntu distribution is becoming the most popular distribution because of its overall ease of use and just the popularity of how easy it is to get around. They're just making it too easy not to use, that people can't afford not to use the product. You still don't have to pay for any of your upgrades. So right now, with Ubuntu, I can get in, click through a couple screens here. This is an example of the scripting size here. You still have to go through and do some of your work as far as in a terminal upgrade. The terminal is where you type in your code and force changes to the system. This is probably the only drawback. This is very early Microsoft Windows, and a lot of people have problems with it. If there's one drawback to Ubuntu or Linux, this would be it, that everything can't be done in the GUI interface. With that being said, most of this can be done now in simple point, click, and it's done. And a lot of people these days are using Ubuntu, so they're coming up with all kinds of creative solutions to their systems. This is an example of someone that's gone out and created their own custom desktop with it. So, in conclusion, because of the cost, the support, and the ease of use, Ubuntu is now a viable solution, and Linux is a viable solution for the average user to use versus Windows. Linux and Ubuntu have made strides to make it more user-friendly. The level of service is higher than it's ever been in years, and with the added pace of life and the burden of how much everything costs these days, not having to pay for a software every couple years is a huge way to save some money.